And with that, we will get to our main topic today here on Mastering Dungeons. We are going to talk about the Blade Runner starter set and the adventure that comes with it called Electric Dreams. Teos, I'm going to hand over the floor to you to talk about this amazing product.
Absolutely. I'm excited about this. The Blade Runner RPG was released in December 2022 by Swedish RPG company Fria Ligan or Free League after a successful 1.6 million crowdfunding effort. And so, it essentially felt like it launched last year in 2023 because by the time, everybody really got their hands on and started looking through it, it was 2023. I played it last year at GameholeCon, and I've started running this starter set, so I'm pretty familiar with it, and I'll probably do the heavy lifting on this show. But the RPG is really cool, and I did not back it. I wasn't sure if this was for me, but as I started reading more and more about it, I got more and more interested in this. Plus, I'd had so much fun with other Free League games. And this is based on the original 1968 novel by Philip K. Dick, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and both movies. So it's set in the year 2037 in essentially an alternate LA in that previous years are not our years. Things happen, in the 90s and 80s that did not happen in our 80s and 90s and so on. But briefly, the world has been ravaged by pollution and environmental collapse. Okay, that part's true. The most wealthy travel off-world, leaving the rest behind, confined to a few large cities that haven't been, blown up and destroyed by pollution and things like that. So LA is this mega city where the rich essentially build on top of the buildings that already exist. And the higher up you go, the wealthier you are. So the top people never have to go down to the ground. They just fly around in sky cars, whereas the poorest might live in stairwells near the bottom levels. The Tyrell Corporation and later the Wallace Corporation create replicants, androids that can pass as humans unless you carefully examine them. And in the first movie, if you saw that, they have short lifespans, and that's part of the interesting question of it. Later, the Nexus 8 and 9 models live normal lifespans. In various points in history, they become illegal, then now they are legal, but there is a lot of hatred and misunderstanding towards them. And what's nice is, unlike other RPGs where it just sort of feels like pseudo racism, this goes a little deeper because of the nature of androids to ask questions about humanity. We are relying upon these androids for wars, labor, even love. And when you play the game in this version, because you're after both movies, you can play humans that are members of the Blade Runner group of the LAPD, or you can play a replicant. And your charge is to terminate the illegal older models that shouldn't be running around and to ensure that the current Nexus 9s are working well. And so some of you are Nexus 9s. And the key setting that all of this is asking is, what does it mean to be human? And what are the experiences you're going to have at a personal level when you are in this world interacting with these hard choices? And everything about the rules and about the adventure is reinforcing those key pieces.
So I looked at just the starter rulebook,
Mm-hmm.
but the starter set itself, which is priced at $53.39, which is often available for less, has an 80-page condensed rulebook, a 56-page adventure, which we will talk about later, 4 pre-generated characters, a color map of LA in 2037, 26 full color evidence handouts like crime scene photos, data files, maps, and more, a time tracker sheet, 70 cards that display NPCs, initiative cards, obstacles, chase maneuvers, and so on, a set of 8 dice, two each of D6s, 8s, 10s, and 12s, which is what you need. And there are custom symbols on those dice that illustrate crits or successes. And then you also get the PDFs of all the above if you buy the starters. There is also a 56-page hardcover rulebook DM screen and a second adventure box you can pre-order called Fiery Angels. An upcoming book has been announced that focuses on replicant uprisings and then ties into those inventions. You can look at all of that stuff on freeleaguepublishing.com by going to the Blade Runner RPG section of that site.
Yeah, and I'll say, I own the physical version, and it is kind of absurd how nicely it's done, right? So you get things like a newspaper that you hand out, like the scene starts with reading a newspaper, and you get to actually give your player the newspaper, and then they go, hey, I want to know about this person, and you're like, cool, here's the information that you have in the data bank, and here's the NPC you're talking to, and here's a piece of a poem that you find in a book, and here's the, if you've seen the movie with the kind of enhance joke to it, or it's not a joke in the movie, but you can say like, hey, I want to enhance this part of this picture, and you can in some cases, and it's really neat. I mean, you feel so supported when you use this starter set because all the pieces there are directly around making a great experience, and that may sound like simple, but there's so many starter sets where you're like, I didn't really use this doohickey, right? And these are a lot of doohickeys that you do enjoy using. And again, I'm halfway through running it, and I have loved, when they go like, I want to look at this thing. You're like, here's what you see, and they're like, ooh,
Yeah.
candy.
Yeah. And like you say, that sort of experience that you can get as the game master and then provide for your players when it's done for you to such a degree, it means at least a few more eyes on the game and a few more sessions that people will agree to play.
Yeah.
So it's huge to be able to do that, and especially in a starter set.
Yeah.
So then we get an overview of the rules in the rules booklet, which we will provide to you here. Characters have 4 abilities. They have strength, agility, intelligence, and empathy. So each of these traits, instead of having a numerical value, has a letter value. A being the highest rank in something, and D being the lowest. Each letter, A through D, corresponds to a size of a die. So A is a D12, B is a D10, C is a D8, and D is a D6. There are skills then that have the same ratings, A through D, and the same die size established for each. And there are 13 skills. So you have 4 attributes, 13 skills. When you try to do something that's a challenge that you need to check to see if you can succeed, you roll the die for your ability attribute and the die for your skill to see if you succeed. Now tell me about what you need to do to succeed.
Yeah, so you need at least a 6 on either die to succeed. And if you fail, then we're supposed to dig into that narrative. But you also can push the roll, but you might lose resolve. And if you're a replicant, you can push twice because you can kind of dig deeper through your circuitry. If you roll a 10 or higher, it counts as 2 successes, or you could have succeeded on both dice. 2 successes is a critical success. And for non-combat, the GM can pick a benefit. For combat, well, this is where the game gets brutal. You might, break someone's arm, or you might give them a headshot, and it's over for that target. And the same thing is true of characters. So combat, ouch. But that kind of success, fail, critical success is a big part of the game, making it fairly swingy and interesting to kind of paint this dark, dire future, I guess. There is advantage. Advantage means that the smallest of your 2 dice, you roll that twice. And so you could get more than 2 successes. Disadvantage removes the smallest die that you would roll.
And you also have specialties. And we've seen this in other games where, I think in Fate, it's called a trick, maybe. It's something that's a very specific bonus that you can get if you do something quite simple, or not quite simple, but quite specified, similar to a feat maybe in D&D. And you also have health and resolve. Health is your ability to take physical damage, Resolve is your ability to take mental stress. Uh, if you are doing something and you are shot, if you are punched, you take health damage, physical
Hmm.
damage. And then if you fail certain things, if you push your roll and you roll a one, then you take mental stress, which counts down against your resolve.
And if I recall
What
correctly,
about downtime?
I was going to say with
Oh,
Resolve, I
go
think it
ahead.
also can be a little bit like, folks might be familiar with Call of Cthulhu, where being presented with certain situations can hurt your resolve
Mhm.
as well, which is kind
Right.
of interesting.
There's a table of things that will sap your resolve, like
Okay. Yeah.
witnessing a horrifying event, being
Yeah.
tortured. Those
Good.
things
Good.
will
I thought
hurt
I
your
remembered that.
resolve.
Good. Good. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's really both of them are interesting in how they play their roles. And again, health is important, but some situations can come up where you're going to die in a few rounds if you're not uh, quickly cured or taken to a hospital. Um, Downtime is fascinating because of how important it is and how it plays into the overall game, where time is tracked in shifts. And it's a really interesting if you think about, what else
Mhm.
could we do around long rests? Well, here's one possible way. So there are 4 shifts per
Mhm.
day, and you're supposed to spend one of them resting. And when you do something, it's generally going to require a shift to travel there and handle that thing. And so a shift will have passed doing that. And the game, in fact, often encourages you, and the starter set for sure, to split up and go find out, look for clues in different places. So 2 of you might go to one place and one to another and one to another. And that is what you're doing during that shift. So in theory, you're going to take a shift to rest somewhere during the day. If you don't, you're going to lose resolve. Some characters have special ways to mitigate it and keep going. And that's example of a specialty. So like I played one, and one of the pre-gens has sort of the idea is that you're this grizzled veteran, and so you can just sort of tap into your pack of smokes and just you know you can get rid of that resolve loss or ignore it when you take a shift. Like you're hard in that way. And that's kind of a fun way that the specialties kind of help color your character. So the other thing about downtime is that when you rest, the game encourages you to uncover clues or encounter something related to your past. And downtime can be going to a rave party. Like if that's how you recharge, then that's what you're doing, right? Or you might actually just be sleeping, or you might be getting drunk because you have a problem, right? It's that kind of game. And so the DM is encouraged to decide what plays during downtime, which can be a key memory being unlocked. If you think of the movie, there's a really interesting sort of unicorn scene. That's the kind of thing that can happen. And so the adventure actually has a table of downtime things that can be generic, but they can also be sort of clues to the adventure. You might meet somebody that's a key relationship or something like that. So those are all interesting ways that the DM kind of furthers the narrative even during the downtime, which is very different than just taking a rest in a dungeon. And I like that a lot.
Yeah, tell me about these humanity points because that's interesting in the sense that you can play a human or a replicant,
Yeah.
but the replicant in some ways is more human than humans, or it can be played that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting argument. The humanity points are cool. What I like most about humanity points are that they are a thing that's being tracked somewhat in opposition to promotion points. And so, all of this is you are a Blade
Mhm.
Runner working for the LAPD. And you're kind of like almost the elite forces of the cops, right? With this specific task around replicants. And so you have abilities and permissions that other cops don't. And but you're being watched by all of your chain of command, and in particular the deputy chief who's above you. So when you get sent out to do things, you have choices. And in any scene, the DM's supposed to sort of say like, okay, you uncovered all these clues. Do you upload that all to the LAPD mainframe? And that clue may include somebody who's a possible replicant from an older model that should be hunted down and retired. Do you upload that? And if you do, well, promotion point, because you're doing your job, finding those terrible replicants that need to be ended. But if you don't, you get a humanity point because you're like, I want to know who this person is before I decide whether to retire them. And so that kind of compassion type thing is woven into the game with these kind of questions of how to handle things. And this starter set does a very good job. We talked about, like, for Planescape and when we were at Gamehole, how does a setting or an adventure teach you to run the game? And this starter set is an absolute example of, it shows the DM how to create hard moral choices and this juxtaposition between getting promoted, which can lead to skill increases and other things, sort of XP, if you will, right? Or humanity that is then gonna give you different benefits over time. And both the replicants and the humans can gain these humanity points as they're wrestling with these questions.
If you're used to D&D, you're used to one style of gameplay. And part of the problem with new games isn't the problem with the games. It's a problem with the experience of the people running or playing the games, trying to run the game like a different game.
Yeah, sure.
So when we say something like you can push rolls, since that's not a part of D&D, you may think, well, I don't want to do that. Or you don't see the importance of doing certain things. This game expects you to push rolls. It expects you to push rolls a lot. Part of the challenge of the game is in some points your opponent can push, but you can't. So if it's your turn and you're having an opposed check, you can push, but they can't. And then vice versa. If it's their turn and they attack you, they can push, but you can't. So, and then how that works mechanically and what are the benefits versus the downside of doing these things, and the points that are added to the game, such as humanity points and those things, to show, but to mechanically show, as you were saying, what the setting and what the game expect you to do is super interesting.
Yeah, and so two other quick little bits of that. Promotion points allow you to learn a new specialty, so kind of the feats. Humanity points allow you to increase your skills. So they kind of do different things, and you ideally kind of want both of them if you were to meta play it. But I think the game does a good job of not encouraging that. And as you said, replicants have one thing that's interesting with humanity points. They take baseline tests periodically, and they may fail them, and failing them gives you a humanity point, because the reason you're failing it is you're a little too human, right? Kind of the idea, which is kind of fun. And only replicants can take these baseline tests and fail them, which is really kind of neat. And then things like interacting with your key memories and things like that give you humanity points. And all of these systems do a very nice job of kind of getting in your head as a player or GM and encouraging you to kind of think through, like, it's almost like you're playing, Harrison Ford as a Blade Runner, and thinking to yourself, how do I feel about this situation? And at least in my experiences of running a game and playing a game, in both cases, people were really very good about doing what their characters should do and getting in the head of that character because of all these systems. So I'm very impressed with how this all comes together. Yeah, really neat.
Yeah. And you mentioned in the past that the characters have key memories, key relationships, as well as, I forgot what's called, like a physical object that you can interact with to sort of give a role playing thing.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, even androids, replicants, are given these key memories even though they're not real.
Yes.
So
yes.
Even the replicants can go back and remember their mother even though they don't have a mother.
Right. It's amazing. And the game put, like, we're going to avoid so far spoilers to the adventure, though later we'll have to get into them in a bit.
Right.
But, the adventure does a good job of saying, well, what does that memory mean? And could that memory even be a problem to you? And that's a really neat concept, right? And so it's not just the humans who are wrestling with what it means for the replicants to what rights do they have, what are they doing that's real or not real. The replicants are also dealing with the what am I, what's inside of me, what does my key memory mean or not mean, is it even a threat or a danger, is it a liability? It's really fascinating, right?
So let's now get into the game loop, if you will, the rules about sitting down and playing the game and what happens. When you enter combat, they have initiative cards. So you don't roll initiative, you
Hmm.
draw initiative. And the game, at least the starter set, comes with cards numbered 1 to 10,
Yep.
although they say you can use a deck of playing cards and aces 1 up to 10, take out the face cards. So up to 10, you take these and you flip them over. You draw one and you flip them, and that's the order that you go in for that entire combat. At least that's the base way that you're supposed to play. So if
Yeah,
you
and
draw one, congratulations, you go
yeah,
first.
and if you have advantage, you draw two, which is kind of fun, and take the highest, which is kind of neat.
Yep. And if how they work surprise is
Hmm.
if you surprise someone, you just get number one.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
and then it
they
goes from
have
there.
then from everyone else has to just draw normally, which is interesting. Then they give optional rules for drawing either secretly revealing the initiative. So on the first round, you don't know who what the order is. Uh, so you say, anybody have one? Okay, yes. Flip it over. You go first. Okay, anybody have two? Nobody has two. Anybody have three? Three. Okay, you go next, and you don't know right off the bat. And then there was an optional rule for reshuffling and redrawing every round,
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
which is an interesting. If we're talking about D&D, we've talked about 100 reasons why you shouldn't do that. So when I saw that, I was like, I wonder how that would work in this game. If you were 10 this round and one the next round,
Right,
how
right.
much of a
Huh.
how much of a story and game mechanical challenge would that be?
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, Sean. That's a good point. That the story of like switching that up could actually be quite fun. When I ran our first session, I did not change up initiative, and we didn't when I played at Game Hall. Um, yeah, that's interesting. Um, another system that's interesting is they have a chase system. It's not totally unfamiliar from, say, fifth edition's chase system, but it has a built-in kind of table that you look on to determine what kind of things are happening, and you're choosing strategies, which reminds me of Spycraft and how it handles chases. So you do things like you say, okay, I'm the person who's fleeing, and so you choose a strategy that is available for that role. And then you're the person who's pursuing, so you choose a pursuit strategy. I forget the exact name. And then the DM picks a sort of obstacle that shows up from which in the starter set you get a deck for all these things. So you, as DM, draw your obstacle, and that may be really bad if you chose a particular strategy, right? Which is neat. And also, shout out to, this is even just the starter set. It has like such amazing art um, throughout the book, and the rule book. If you buy the core hardback book, it's even more gorgeous, which is really makes it a joy to read through all these systems too.
There's a system of money which is abstract. So you're expected that you have all the basic things that you need to survive. You don't need to keep track of money to buy it. But you, I believe, have connections, a connection
Hmm.
skill. So you can make a roll to see if you are able to get some advanced equipment. And also, your promotion points will give you the ability to go to the LAPD and say, hey, I need improved gear
Yeah.
in order to do my job. So that's similar to Fate in the sense that they also have like some games have a wealth
Yeah.
ability so that you are making checks to get goods rather than keeping track of money.
Yeah, it's good in that, if you want a bowl of ramen, we don't need to worry about it. If you want to try to bribe somebody, then you just spend what's called a chin yen point, sort of like Chinese yen. And that just covers whatever that fee is, right? And similarly, if you want to buy gear, you'll probably spend a Chinian point, or if you're requesting it, then you'll spend a promotion point. And so it becomes just a little simpler. And there is gear detailed, but it's not like a game like Spycraft or Shadowrun where you have, you know, tables and tables of things. There are a few options, and we don't get overly bogged down with it. Every PC has a gun. What the flying cars are called spinners, so you just have one. Which is the point of that is it lets you split up easily, right? I'm going to go to this part of LA. You're going to go to that part. That's fine. We all have flying cars. Um, and a personal device that's a kind of combination phone, camera, data upload, search tool. So it lets you do the enhance kind of part of Blade Runner. Lets you, you know, film something and of course then upload it to the mainframe for those promotion points if you're going to play it that way. It's nice. I think it's a nice balance of it's not so abstract that it's no fun, but you don't sit there trying to figure out what kind of scope you're going to put on your pistol kind of thing.
Right. Anything else to talk about in terms of the basics of the game before we get to the adventure?
Yeah. Let's get ready for some spoilers.
Okay, and
hey everybody, guess what? We actually went pretty long on that recording, so we're going to just cover the rules this time. And next time, you will get the adventure coverage. We'll get into all the details of what Electric Dreams provides as an adventure experience using all of these cool rules.
well, Teos, thank you for sharing your love and your knowledge of this starter set and this game with us. And thank you to all our listeners out there. We also want to give a special shout out to our patrons. Our patrons keep us going, and we really do appreciate it, whether you are a Master of Dungeon supporter, a Master of Realm supporter who gets a shout out in our show notes, or our Masters of the Multiverse patrons who get individually acknowledged right now. Keith Ammon of the Monsters Know What They're Doing, Craig Bailey, Steve Bissonette, Merrick Blackman, Even John, Darren Chandler, Seth Eckel, Andy Edmonds at nerdronomicon.com, Nathan Fuller, The Mighty Jerd, Ben Heisler and Paige Lightman, John Hurst, Chad Jackson, Brian King, Jim Klingler, aka DM Prime Mover, Chad Lynch, The Mathemagician, Eric Mengi, The Micro Ant, John Malley, Falcon Neal, Mike Olson, Post Fiction RPG Audio, Robert Pasley, Vladimir Prenner from Croatia, Chance Russo at Drago Russo, Ross Sandberg, Andy Shockney, Krishna Samose, Thrace, Joe Tyler, James Walton, Graham Ward, and Chris Weber. Thank you so much. We would appreciate your support in that same way, and you can give it by going to patreon.com/masteringdnd and giving us a little bit of your hard-earned money as well as your attention in this year of our Lord 2024. That's patreon.com/masteringdnd. Also, if you want to help out, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or via whatever means you listen to our podcast. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which would be helpful as well. Teos, where can people find you and your new and upcoming work on social media?
Find me on alphastream.org. That is the place. You can find the quick links to all of the Planescape episodes we covered. So if you're running that or want to remember whether you should run it, you can find direct links to our show notes if you're a patron subscriber to each episode and the summary of all the advice we gave. So check that out at alphastream.org. Shawn, where are you?
You know where I am. I am on the social medias at Shawn Merwin, whether it's Twitter or Mastodon or Blue Sky. You can also follow the show on those platforms as well. You can join our community and ask questions via our Patreon, and we have a wonderful Patreon Discord channel where we discuss all of these topics with our subscribers. And you can also leave comments on the Mastering Dungeons YouTube channel. That's YouTube at Mastering Dungeons. So, Teos, we have gone into the future, the dark, dark future, especially in LA. What are we going to do now?
Well, I'm going to stop thinking about golden ages and I'm going to log into my work so I can earn some promotion points.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm going to look at everyone around me and wonder if they're a replicant, and then sort of wish I were.